Welcome to Simply Put Sense. I'm that cologne guy E, and this is Simply Put Sense. And I'm so grateful for you all to come through. Everyone will pile in as you can, but I am really excited for today's live stream. I am going to be chatting with Lev Glazman of Fresh, of the Maker Brands, of the Bartlett House Bakery. This man is an amazing entrepreneur. And I'm really excited to pick his brain, to get some insight in the world of beauty and the world of perfumery. And this is a really amazing person to gain insight from. So this might be an awesome live stream where a lot of you who are interested in fragrance or interested in beauty as a potential career, this might inspire a lot of you. We'll see, hopefully. But I would love to bring on Lev, and yeah, let's see how this goes because I've never done this before, but this is going to be so much fun. So I'm going to add Lev. Hey, Lev, how are you?
Alina, how are you, my friend?
I am very blessed. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm great. Well, I myself trying to figure out how that technology here works, My
Well, it's
God,
working
I
well.
wish I would be reborn again with like some ability to technologically, perform,
Uh, you
It's
are
all those new
doing,
things,
you're doing it
Zooms,
well.
Zooms, Teams, all of those things. That's a new one, but
Well, you're on
hopefully,
yes, you're definitely on. I can hear you really well, and I'm sure everyone else can as well. And you're looking great. Thank you so much for joining us on the Simply Put Sent live at Bergdorf Goodman.
it's a
Where are
pleasure.
you right now?
I'm very excited, very excited that we actually had the opportunity to do it. I'm
Absolutely.
I'm at the Maker in Hudson.
Awesome.
So I usually try to be here once a week or every other week, but trying to be here once a week. So I'm here right now with my teams,
Amazing.
sitting in the
Amazing.
Rose Room, surrounded by beautiful prints of roses. It's a very popular room that we have in the hotel.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love the
um,
Maker. I cannot wait to visit.
you will.
It's an
We will.
amazing space. Every time I
We,
see it, I'm inspired.
yeah, well, you remember we talked about it. Is that you
Absolutely.
definitely come
Absolutely.
here. Uh, we'll have dinner here. You'll stay here, so you can fully experience that. Even you've seen enough of pictures, and you've been in the world of the maker for a while sometimes, but you'll you'll make your way here.
Absolutely. So, just for full disclosure, everyone, I work for the Maker at Bergdorf Goodman. I manage the business at Bergdorf. An amazing experience. And I mean, a lot of people were curious, like what I was going to do when I left Atelier Cologne, and I really looked hard for the right fit. I wasn't taking on any and every offer that I received. I was very deliberate, and I'm so glad that I waited it out because I got to meet you all through Gerard from Atelier Cologne. So it was an amazing fit. And once I met you and Alina, and I smelt the fragrances, I just knew this was a great opportunity for me to build on. So I'm very happy to be on the Maker team. But this is not going to be an easy interview, Lev. Just so you know.
Whatever it is, listen, you can charge me. I interviewed you when you came to for to the maker the first time when
Absolutely.
we met, but it listen, it was very easy to me for me because it was very pleasurable. It was amazing to meet you. We really all fell in love with you right from the get go. Your passion for fragrance and knowledge is very unique, and we're lucky to have you part of our team. And it's an amazing collaboration.
It really is.
So be
Thank you
easy on
so
me.
much.
I'm trying to be nice to you right now. Just be easy on.
I will be for sure. Hold on, let me just double
I'm
check.
kidding.
Can everyone hear properly? I just want to make sure. Because sometimes we have a little bit of a technical difficulty with the mics. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. You can hear me though, right?
I can hear you very well.
Amazing. Shayna, maybe you can give us some insight. Can you hear well, Shayna? If you're in the chat, you can answer there. Um, So, I'm really excited to get into this because, as I mentioned to everyone, okay, perfect, sound as well. As I mentioned to everyone, you are an amazingly accomplished business person in the world of beauty. You and your partner in crime, Alina, have been an amazing force, and you've done amazing work in the business of beauty, perfumery, and I'm really, really curious to pick your brain. So, first of all, when did you, how did you and Alina meet? I'm curious.
Well, how much time do you have? I'll try to be as quick as I can, okay? So
Sure.
when I came to this country in 1983, I immigrated from Israel. Alina and I met at that time. Our mutual friend introduced us. Um, we actually, I literally was like a month into me moving into the United States. Alina had already been here since for quite a few years. She was
Wow.
studying fashion in Parsons in New York. Uh,
Wow.
and when we met in the club, we really didn't like each other that
Wait a
first
minute.
time.
Wait a minute. You met Alina in the club.
We met her in the club because our friend invited us to come with him to the club, and he
I
invited
gotta
Alina.
know what club?
It was the name of the club. Well, it was actually in Boston. She was because
Okay.
I was living in Boston at the time because
That
my
is so
family,
fascinating.
and Alina was visiting her parents who live in Boston because she was living in New York. They said she was in Parsons, so she came for a visit, and it was a weekend, and the friend wanted to us to meet each other, and when we met, we
That is
really,
amazing.
I don't think that we connected right there. There are a lot of, just like there was no. It's not about chemistry. I think we
Right.
both were coming from very different places, and it took us 7 years to reconnect again, and
Wow.
we actually our roads were really crossing in the right way, where we basically were in the same place in our lives, and I already completely assimilated into my life here, and there are a lot of changes that happened in 7 years. Alina been already in the industry, working, designing, dressing America, and here we are. We met, and we reconnected, and we had this incredible chemistry right from the get-go. And
Absolutely. That's
after seven
fascinating.
years, we became friends. And shortly thereafter, we moved on from friendship to something much more intimate than that, and we
Wow.
got married very, very quickly. And basically, I would say, what is it? A year and a half later, we started our business back in
I
1991.
I think that is such an amazing story. I mean, first of all, a lot of guys don't believe that it's possible to meet a soulmate in the clubs. But it is possible. You made it.
Well, you
You
are, come on.
absolutely.
But people meet in all kind of places. I mean,
That is so true. That is so
you
true.
never know.
You never know. So that's fascinating. So a year and a half after you marry, you built the brand Fresh, which a lot of people know is one of the first beauty brands in the world of beauty that actually focused on natural ingredients. And I'm really, really curious, how did the concept of that come about?
Well, I mean, the whole thing about Fresh was is that I was always into beauty world in a way because I was always fascinated with that. Particularly, for me, it started with the fragrance because I was, always very, very passionate about fragrances, and it's a separate story how I got there. But from my passion to fragrance, it really was bringing me closer to the world of beauty. And I always found that fragrance and beauty, there's something about, there's immediate gratification from that. When you spray a fragrance, it evokes
Absolutely.
your certain emotion, memory, and other things. And with beauty, it's sort of like you taking care of yourself, and you have like this immediate gratification when you applying things on yourself, and you putting things on your skin, or you're taking a bath, or whatever it is. I always found it to be one of the most incredible rituals and very, very important ones. And
Absolutely.
when the idea about fresh popped up, I personally was already very fascinated with all the natural ingredients that
Mm,
are out there, and I couldn't understand why we are not taking this route, because that's part of our heritage. This is what we used to use for centuries.
right.
So why can't we go back and explore it again, but make it more relevant at the times that we were living, and
Right.
utilizing the ability for us to do the research on natural ingredients, and use the science that we scientifically did not have it a few hundred years ago, but we have it now, and
Right.
to see how we can incorporate it into the products, and bring something to the forefront that creates a better connection between the consumer and the product itself, because we can relate to the ingredients that are in. Because I
Absolutely.
would be, I would be visiting department stores for so many years, buying different beauty products, and obviously exploring, always trying to see what's new is out there. And every time when the beauty consultants were talk to me, I'm not saying that the products were not good, but I couldn't fully relate to it because I could not understand the full chemistry behind it and the science
Got you.
behind it. And here, and I would not emotionally connect to it, but here, when you have that knowledge and understanding what the ingredients is, and the ingredient is something that you familiar, it's part of your daily life. It could be, we have ingredients as like milk, or sugar, or honey. You understand, and if you attach to it a benefit from that ingredient, you can completely
Mm.
relate to it, because you either eat it or you experience it in other ways, but that creates a much stronger connection to the product, and that's where it's all started. And that's why when we were coming out of the gate, it was amazing to see that the space was pretty clear at the time to talk about it.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. Like, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. How were you able to identify that there was a lane for you in the natural, like, world at that time? I mean, this was at the time I think dial-up was happening. Like, there was no internet. It's really, really difficult to get, like, certain background information on the world of beauty. How were you able to identify at that early stage that there was such a need that needed to be filled? It was a void at that moment. How did you know that that was an opportunity?
Well, it was, first of all, it's an intuition in some
Mm,
ways, and how the intuition relates to my own personal desires. I feel like, okay, if I want it, and yes, maybe my senses were more heightened, and maybe I had higher demand of certain things, and I was asking
hmm.
myself questions, why not? But I felt it might not be exclusive to me. It might be something that people might want to explore,
Wow.
because and if you are sometimes in the forefront of something, and you have the ability to all of a sudden to uh, lead in some ways, and come out and start telling your story, and really be very passionate about it, and do the research and present to the consumers things that they might like, but it starts with me, because I had a
Right.
very high standard, and I wanted it, and I already experienced that, because I was already making my own concoctions at home. My mom always used to laugh at me when I was a kid, is that most of the refrigerator used to be on my face and on my body, because I was doing masks from the jams and from
Wow.
peas and cucumbers from a very young age.
So
So,
you were your
so in a
own
way,
guinea pig, basically.
yeah, so I already sort of like
Okay.
lived it. I had, my skin was pretty horrible. I was breaking out. I had combination skin, acne on my forehead. Particularly, my forehead was a major problem. Couldn't get rid of it. So I had to figure out a way
Mm,
how I get my skin into a better place, and I did it through a lot of natural ingredients, through, believe it or
wow.
not, oils and other things, and without irritating the skin further. And I realized that if I have that desire, and for that, I'm sure that other people probably somewhere would be interested in that. And the moment we started our company, pretty much coming out of the gate, people were very interested in that.
I mean that's fascinating to me because like I mean again way ahead of the curve because now a lot of brands are into naturality. Clean beauty is like the thing right now. It's like the trend of all trends in the
Right.
world of beauty at the moment. And so the fact that you were able to do this way before there was like an there was like a, I guess you could say a proven business model before. That's pretty interesting, pretty risky also. But I'm really curious also, like before, like a lot of people don't realize, but Fresh was also an amazing perfume brand as well, alongside of the other options of skincare and body care. But as far as like perfumes, Fresh has a huge cult following of fragrance lovers and enthusiasts who are who are missing so many of the amazing fragrance that Fresh
Yeah.
created in the past. I'm really curious though, because like before Fresh, I mean, the only brand I could think of that produced fragrances and skincare was probably Avon. I don't even,
Well, well,
or
no, no,
Kiehl's. I
yeah.
know Kiehl's had an oil.
Well, yeah, the beautiful musk oil, and you know, yeah, they're still out there. I mean, they had fragrances also,
That's a
Aramis and
great
other.
point.
Yeah, so they did have it. You know,
But
in
yours
in
was the first natural
uh, uh,
skincare brand that came out with a
well,
line of perfume.
okay. So if we're relating to natural companies, you're absolutely right. Ones that emphasize on natural ingredients, but for me, the whole sensorial experience is a huge part of the product. And when I develop a product, the sensoriality of it have to be is very important. It's always starts with the benefits, of course, and the results, and sort of like the science behind it and what it really does. But it's also the product is never complete for me unless it's a full sensorial experience, and it comes
Got you.
with textures, and of course the fragrances always plays a big role in it. So but as a brand, what we've done is that we came up with collections of fragrances pretty much from
Right.
the get-go. So we were doing our body care and all of these great interesting concepts within the body care, and that's how we started. And then we at the same time we're doing fragrances,
That's a
we,
very important,
and then we
fascinating
got
thing.
into the skincare, and then we segued into the skincare. You know, a few years after that. But the fragrance always existed, and there's always a collection of different scents that I constantly developed. By the
Right.
time, I would say that by the time we opened our um, first store in New York City on Madison Avenue back in 1997, um, we already had probably
That
over 80,
bergamot fragrance.
80 we already probably had close to 80 different fragrances in my library.
Wow.
Not that we
Wow.
launched them all, but between the different products and the other parfums, we
Right.
basically had over 80 fragrances within our library at this
Well,
point.
it's fascinating because now, you know, you have Korres, who's a skincare brand that also creates
Right.
perfume. You have Aesop that's also following suit. I mean, to be the first is really fascinating, and I'm really curious. Like, what made you and Alina decide to launch a perfume line through a skincare brand, a natural skincare brand? That
Uh,
was very risky.
well, I mean, because in the beginning, when we launched our brand, it was launched with body care, and there are certain scents that we incorporated into our body care, and
Right.
that people really loved. And the body care included the soaps, it included shower bath preparations, body creams, hand creams, all of those things that we were bringing and they were based on different ingredients. If it was milk or if it was honey, or whatever the ingredients that I was wanted to focus on at the time, and the benefit of this ingredient, and the fragrances that are associated with each one of those body care items that we showed. Um, the fragrances was a natural way for us to as an add-on
Right.
to the experience, and it was very important for us in order to complete the whole story. Is that to be able to, because you're still putting fragrance on your body,
Right.
so everything felt very much interconnected. and that's why the body care and the fragrances were all happening basically at the same time.
Yeah,
And and
I find that
and I'm
fascinating.
very passionate about fragrances because
Right.
fragrance is the one who got me into the beauty world to begin with.
I
You
would
know.
love for you to explain that.
Okay, so when I was in Russia, uh, I was born in Russia, and I
Hmm.
was there up until I was 10 years old, and there was an event that changed my life when I was 6 years old, and that's what really that's where the sort of like the uh, what do you call it, the seed was planted inside of me, and the love for the
Wow.
fragrance really started to me back then. So in Russia at the time, I'm talking about in during the 1960s, there was an Iron Curtain, and it was pretty much what it is today, as we know. Uh, North Korea or places that you
Right.
can't penetrate through. Nothing goes through.
Right.
Everything is blocked. Uh, Everything is controlled by the government, and
There was a
the
lot
only
of hostility too. You know, it's like Rocky versus Drago. You
oh my
know,
god, oh, that's yeah, that's the movies, but there's
for
there's
sure.
definitely some reality, and the thing is that the only fragrances that were available, two, called Red Moscow, man, one for woman,
Wow.
and Bladen, they were like horrible, and the problem with that is that that's all the fragrance that they had, and the whole world smelled like that. So the man would wear their cologne, and the woman would wear their fragrance, right? And the woman's fragrance was in like it's very amber color, like it's so dark. I don't even know if you put it on any white shirt, it will stain.
Wow.
And the man's was green, and but literally everybody will be smelling the same.
So
And
would you say that the men scent was like a fougere?
oh,
I'm
it was
curious.
but it was a very bad version of it, and the women's were shipped. It was very much based on Chanel number 5, but it was a horrible interpretation of that. And
Wow.
I didn't know at the time. I know now after I already experienced the fragrances, of course. But no matter where we go, you're on the train, you're on the bus, you're with the family gathering, everybody smelled the same. And I literally thought that this is how the world smells.
Wow.
And one day, my mother, her girlfriend came in on one Saturday, um, early afternoon, and we're living in the ground level in this communal apartment. Communal apartment means we were sharing it with another 3 families,
Wow.
and we had a room within the apartment. And so she knocked on the window and she said, "You gotta come with me. Antoine is here. He's here from Paris, and he says he loves you." It was October. It's pretty cold in St. Petersburg in October. It's very wet. It's like things go like literally to your bones.
Wow.
And my mom was with her rollers in her hair. I was playing games in my pajamas. Next thing I remember, we in the cab driving, and I don't even know where. My mother and her girlfriend are very very quiet,
Wow.
and probably we're on the road for maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and we're getting off, and it was sort of like almost an outskirts of St. Petersburg. And as we're getting off, again, I'm with a coat, pajama underneath me. My mom is the same way with her rollers in her hair. And
Wow.
we're standing in front of this row of warehouses, and we start walking. And as we're turning the corner, I see a mayhem going on. I see boxes and lines of people everywhere in front of the boxes, and it's crazy. And I immediately realized, because when I was eavesdropping, when my parents were talking with other adults, thinking I'm sleeping, but I was just listening to their conversations, is that we're in the black market. And the black market in Russia was anything that anybody could smuggle from other parts of the world,
Wow.
stockings that were major deficit, to just a beautiful blouse or a cream or anything that comes from uh, Western world was
Right.
very much in demand. And those black markets will pop up for like half an hour, and then they dismantle because whoever buys on this market, and of course the smuggler, you go to jail. It's criminal offense.
Wow.
So they all and it's very internal. It's that they that's why they call each one talked in codes to each other, and the reference to Antoine was about it's a particular guy that always managed to bring this one particular fragrance from France, and that's why they call him Antoine. He's from Paris. He says he loves you. It means he brought that fragrance. And they even
Wow.
talk codes between each other because they were so afraid that somebody will hear them. So as we're standing in line in front of Antoine, uh, who had the fragrance, uh, as we're getting closer, my mother was very nervous, and she was nervous because what if he'll sell out by the time we're going to get there? So but finally, we stood in front of him. He pulls out the
Wow.
box. My mother pays him 120 rubles.
Wow.
And 120 rubles, it was her 1 month's salary. We paid for our room was 22 rubles a month. So she
Wow.
basically paid uh, 6 months worth of our living rent and 1 month of salary to buy this one small bottle of fragrance. So
Wow.
what happened is that she couldn't get rid of money fast enough. And we're standing there, and she took me aside, and right there she ripped the cellophane, opened the box, and put the fragrance on herself. And something happened at that particular moment because I felt like everything fell away. Everything. The ridiculousness of the way I looked. My mother transformed because like the face, her expression was so different, and
Wow.
I smelled was so divine. I never smelled anything like this in my life. And at that moment, I I literally realized that my life probably going to be changed forever because it was such an impactful moment, and
Wow.
somehow I was at the right place at the right time, I guess, to fall in love with it because I realized that there was a transformative experience that happened, and I was part of it,
Wow.
and the fragrance played such a huge role, and that's where my obsession with fragrances started, and that's how I ended up being where I am right now because
Wow.
my my research and my passion about scents, and then of course, uh, sort of like other beauty products, which was always a big interest to me. How you put one thing with another and makes it something else. It was my own personal curiosity. That's how I ended up being in that. That's what started it for me. It didn't like I didn't wake
Wow.
up one day and said I just want to do fragrances.
I
It
just
came
find that
from
to be an amazing story. Yeah, like I mean, and the fact that she put herself, that's fascinating to me that a fragrance inspired like such a dangerous adventure, you know? That's actually, I'm sure, very, very scary. Like, were you nervous?
when I was with her.
Yeah, like I'm sure it
I
had to
was not.
be.
A 6-year-old is not that nervous because I don't know what repercussions are. I mean, I know that
Ah.
parents talk about it, but my mom was very nervous, very, very nervous. But so as many other ladies that were there with the kids that were ran there the same way as me and my mother. So
That
so
is so
so
interesting. Wow.
so that's why it's sort of like it's the adults really had a much more stressful moments uh,
Right.
than we did. But it was very profound experience for me. I would never forget it.
One of the things I notice is that, you know, children at that age probably won't be able to feel that, but you feel the energy from your parent. Was she a little bit uncomfortable? Did she feel at ease? Was she a little bit nervous? Like, how was her demeanor when you were with her? Do you remember that?
I think she was more uncomfortable and not at ease, being afraid, not so much that she's going to be caught, but she might not be able to get the box of
Ah,
fragrance
oh
because
wow.
the line was so big and there were so many people that that's what they were
Wow.
afraid of. That was her, I think, her biggest fear because with the way how she applied it on herself and how she opened the box, the hunger that she wanted to have something that smells different from other people, that could highlight her individuality and whatever it is. That's what she wanted. That's what she wanted in the moment. And
Wow.
what was amazing also is that from this point on, once this fragrance, once she applied that fragrance, because that's the first time she actually managed to buy it and have it for herself,
Hmm.
because she could never make it for whatever reason. Either they ran out of it, or you never know when those things are happening. But every time from this point on, my mom would be putting the fragrances on. She would leave the house. I would be coming from school before she comes back, and the house smells like her. And it's like you feel like my mother's spirit is there, and it's like
Wow.
it was amazing. It's like it's something so familiar. You're opening the doors into your room, and the smell is that it's so powerful,
Wow.
that
Do you,
association with the person that you love, and you can actually smell them, like right there, or
I
even if they're there.
I love that about fragrance. To me, it's like a literal, it's like a time machine. It takes me to places, people, and
Right.
experiences that I've had in my past, and I love that about perfume. But I'm really, really curious. Do you remember? Do you own that bottle that she purchased at the black market that day?
Well, it's very easy. It's actually I don't own the bottle. I know exactly how it smells.
Okay.
Uh, but the thing is that many years later, when I was already fresh and I was making my own fragrances, I was working in Grass
Mm.
uh, with a very good friend of mine. She's also a perfumer. Her name is Lynn Harris,
Yes,
and
love her. Love her
she's
work.
amazing. She's one of the closest friends I have, and we
Wow.
like we're such a soulmates in the fragrance. She has her own world that she created, the world of fragrances, and
She's a brilliant artist with green ingredients. Oh
yeah.
my
So
gosh.
right,
Love,
and
love, love.
we right. She's amazing. She's incredible. So we're working together side by side, and we went on this trip in Grass, and we're working with the fragrance house. She's Lina's a true perfumer. I'm a fragrance architect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fragrance architect,
Mm.
evaluator, fragrance architect. I build the frame around the fragrance. She's a perfumer that actually makes fragrances. So we always we would be working together, and we particularly on this trip in Grass, it was we were there for like a week, and
Wow.
bouncing ideas off of each other, and I'm doing my thing and she's doing her thing, and it was pretty incredible. And in any case, I one of the heads, one of the owners of the perfume house, the manufacturers that make the make the essences and all of those things, they asked me, Lev, I mean, how come you're not a perfumer? Because you're so close to being that. And I
Right.
explained, you know what? I never wanted to be fully on that side because I want to keep on being creative. So it's easier for me to be looking from outside in and to
Right.
continue sort of like building my knowledge and continue being what I'm being called, the fragrance architect, because I think that
Mm.
it's really gives me an opportunity to dream and to keep on expanding it further and further. And then they said, you have like a very unique passion to fragrance, and you talk the language of fragrance in a very particular way.
Right.
So I told him the story about my mother. Uh, he told me to wait for a second. I'll be right back. And 5 minutes later, the door opens up, and there's this um, amazing, like this man was standing there. He's like was more mature and older guy, and he said, "I want to introduce you to the perfumer that created that fragrance."
Mm.
We called it, the name of the fragrance was Climat, by Lancôme,
Yes.
and he said he this is the perfumer. He made this fragrance, and he was introduced to me, and it was a very emotional moment to me that I'm so many years later. I'm here in my 30s, sitting there, standing there in front of a perfumer, maybe, I don't know, 30 years later.
Mm.
And what jump started me, and I'm actually standing in front of the perfumer, and
That's wow.
I
The
called my mother from,
perfumer, yeah.
I called my mother from there, and
Wow.
uh, it was, it was like so emotional. But in any case, so that's pretty incredible how sometimes things happening in life, and
I
how you can
agree.
relive some of those moments.
I think that's such an amazing, touching really, really fascinating story that also explains a lot about why you take perfume so seriously. And because I can tell, like when I smell fragrances that you have a hand in, it's
Yeah.
it's it's unique. It has a I could tell there's passion from you. I can tell that you really care about perfumery and it's not like a cash grab money situation for you. You're not just trying to make a ton of money off the market. You really want to offer something to the market that it's not on the market, or you want to offer people something special. And I really, really appreciate your dedication to that. But I'm really curious about something because the thing about Fresh is that you were responsible for some of the most iconic fragrances that have an amazing cult following, but I have to ask, fan favorites like brown sugar, honeysuckle, fig apricot, and cannabis santal, they're so missed. Actually, I actually would go to Fresh Instagram and I would notice on random posts, people would ask, I love cannabis santal. Please bring it back. I'm really curious, like out of all of the fragrances that you've created from that era, what are your favorites? What is the scent out of those that you're the most proud of? I'm curious.
It's a very tough question. I was asking who's your favorite child.
I know.
It's
I
really a
know.
tough one. You know,
Well, you know what? Maybe it's this way. Maybe you can
no,
share
no,
the fragrance. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, no. It's look. It's all depends. I mean, uh, the way how I wear fragrance is one is that it's really depends on my mood.
For sure.
Depends time of the year. I could love very much wearing something today, and I might want to have a desire to put something else tomorrow. You
Right.
know, it's
Same
looking
here.
what's yeah, it's looking what's the weather outside is and how the air feels, how I feel personally when I wake up in the morning. Um, but when I create fragrances, it's not that I create each one of them for myself, but I create because I want to explore the the whole concept of what does it means to put this note and this note together when I smell it in my head, and I want to start really bring it to life because it you first you start smelling it here, and it's just comes from a complete curiosity. If it's for example jasmine lily. Okay, so for me it was like how I want this jasmine to smell. I wanted to smell. Oh, I remember I smelled the jasmine in the jasmine was growing on my way to the beach, and there's a salty air and the pine and the moss and the grass and all and the strawberry and everything that smelled around it, and it was the morning after the rain and so the jasmine itself wasn't smelling completely like jasmine. It smelled like everything else around it. So to me, it's more about being fascinated with some of those things, and it
Right.
it might not be something that I would personally wear, but I just know that there will be people that would love to experience that, and I know that there's and for me, I would love to sort of like go through this amazing challenge because I smell it in my head every time I start smelling fragrance in my head because it was part of my memory of part of something that I experienced in certain at certain time, like I just described. I
Right.
want to create it. I want to put it together. So it starts becoming more of a fascination and curiosity,
Wow.
and then you get to work on it. And when you start exploring and smelling all the submissions of that fragrance that you brief and you talk about and you articulated the type of notes you want to have in this fragrance, you always in the end of the day hit on one that smells exactly how you smell it in your head. And that is
That's insane. I can imagine that's like an amazing epiphany moment when you're like,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know. So what is my favorite? I love them all because of the part of the creation. How I wear them, it goes. There could be a fragrance that could be in my closet for a year and on my or my medicine cabinet and I have a lot of fragrances, and I might
Yes, you do.
not do it anymore, and I'll do something else, and then all of a sudden I have a craving to put it again, or I have a craving to, I created this fragrance, and and I have this other fragrance. I I think I can mix them together, and it could be such a beautiful combination. It always hits me, you know.
Wow.
So a lot of time, I mean, I never wear one fragrance. I typically wear more than one on me. I'm
At the same
layering it.
time. Okay, so you're a layerer. Okay.
I'm a layer,
Awesome.
but no, but I always talk when I talk about layering, and I know you're doing the same thing, because we talked about it. Is that I don't ever layer a fragrance one on top of another, uh,
Mm.
because that's not the right way to do that. Because you're completely changing the composition of the two fragrances.
Mm-hmm.
I always use a fragrance. One fragrance, I'll put it on one part of my shoulder, the other one on the other.
For
Uh,
sure.
then one here and one here, the same two fragrances. You just don't ever connect them one on top of another, and the fragrance is finding a way to connect with each other. And it's a much
I
better way to experience the layering,
mm,
that way, because you enveloped in that. It become more like a kaleidoscope rather than just really smooshing all the notes, one on top of another, because how the molecules of this fragrance are going to be working when you mixing them, actually
mm,
mixing them one on top of another, it really might not come out the way how you think it should.
right.
Uh,
Well, I
and
noticed like before I learned that, well, I'd known about that technique of layering a while, but I always used to take the risk of layering on top of each other, and it would be very hit or miss, you know, and sometimes it'll smell great initially, but it dries down into something weird, you know, and odd.
absolutely.
Now, sometimes that odd, weird thing is actually appealing, but I do respect and understand that, you know, sometimes a fragrance was made to smell a certain way, and by adding a new scent on top of it, you might be affecting how those molecules like are meant to smell. And so I completely get that. But I also used to remember thinking before you like demonstrated the technique you use to layer, I used to think like you're just going to smell like two separate fragrances. But fascinatingly, when you sprayed a couple of those fragrances, Wild and Stag, on yourself one day, I really was able to smell both fragrances separately, but in the air together in a way that was really really interesting and attractive. And even the Wild, where I didn't notice the tuberose as much, when I smelled it in the air with Stag, the tuberose really came forward. So I was really impressed and fascinated by that technique of layering fragrances. But I have to tell you, Lev, like I asked you what your favorite fragrance from those discontinued gems from Fresh were. I have to tell you mine is Cannabis Santal. I
Yeah.
think Cannabis Santal is, and to be honest, I still believe it's such a special scent. So much so that tons of brands have copied it over the years, you know, because it was way ahead of its time. You know, right now, cannabis fragrances are like the trend, but at that time when Cannabis Santal came out, but I think it was 2006, that fragrance was a unicorn in the world of fragrance because I don't believe there was never a perfume before Cannabis Santal with the word cannabis in its name. So that was
No.
very risky for a brand like Fresh because Fresh was considered a much more wholesome company, you know, still is considered a very, I mean, I would imagine a lot of the clients that was served at Fresh were, you know, a wide range of people from like business execs to soccer moms. So I'm sure it was kind of risky when you decided to put the word cannabis on a Fresh branded fragrance. Were you a little bit concerned or were you a little bit nervous about how it would be received by the Fresh clientele, or were you just like excited to see what it would do?
Well, I think that what happened with cannabis was even the way I created the fragrance because I was inspired by something because I had a certain experience in my personal life and with somebody because we already know Alina and I are partners in business and very very close. She's part of my family, but we're also living separately from each other and I had an experience at the time in my life where I enjoyed somebody's companies very much, and it captured the smell of that interaction, and
Wow.
and I felt that it was very, very important for me to translate it in a certain way, and it was a little controversial for me. It was really controversial in a way, the whole approach, how I approached this fragrance, and just the emotions around it and everything else. But I really wanted to not to be controversial for the sake of being controversial, but really
Right.
to keep it to that personal experience. That's why the fragrance has such a sensual fragrance. It's very sensual
I
and it's
I
very unique.
agree.
And I incorporated very particular sort of like essences into it that really captured the moments that I experienced. And I saw the fragrance in a very, very particular way. And I remember when I said, I want to call it, there was a word cannabis in it. And I people tried to talk me out of it. And more they tried to talk me out of it, more I was convinced that I'm doing the right thing.
I'm
If
noticing
somebody's,
a I'm
you
noticing a
know,
pattern with you, Lev. You are a habitual risk taker. You know, you are a habitual risk taker because, like a lot of people, and I find that people who take risks in business, I mean, there's a high reward when you do it properly, when you make that mark, um, and you take a riskier route. The payoff can be huge. And I mean, I noticed that like a lot of people, particularly a lot of people who loved Fresh and a lot of people who just love the fragrances from Fresh found that fragrance specifically to be the ultimate, you know, and it was an amazing, beautiful experience of patchouli and cannabis. And I just think it was so well done. To this day, I'm like a huge fan of that scent. And although I don't have a bottle anymore, I did before, even though I don't have a bottle anymore, as I mentioned, so many brands have been inspired by it. I'm really
thank you.
curious. Oh, no problem. But I'm really curious. Have you ever been tempted to create a best-selling fragrance or reinterpret a best-selling fragrance in your way? Because a lot of brands are doing that, being that there's a
It
lot of
was.
risk aversion. A lot of companies don't want to take the risk and make something new, so they kind of a lot of brands find out like kind of like follow the leader in a sense. And if something is a bestseller, they want to share their interpretation of it. Have you ever been tempted to do that?
Wasn't tempted. I've been actually asked. I can't name the name of the fragrance, but I've been asked a couple times to try to sort of like reinterpret the fragrance and modernize it, and I would never do that. I would never touch it. This is not. I would never touch something that was so beautifully done and part of the history, and dab my own fingers into it. I'd rather create my own.
I
Uh,
appreciate that. Even if it's a fragrance that is no longer available to the public, um,
uh,
there have been.
there's a point of inspiration always, and you can have something that will be a reference.
Got you.
There are certain fragrances that I love so much, and I feel like I could see a facet of my fragrance that I create could be in it. Okay,
Right.
although I like to create something that becomes very much of a signature to our and my style of making a fragrance. Uh, but yes, I mean there are some Jean Pateau and or
Yes.
all the fragrances of from Nina Ricci, from Balmain, from they all had like incredible offerings of fragrances. They were so different and not commercialized in any way. They're
Right.
very particular. Uh, they history making fragrances, and they stood in the league of its own, and I have so much respect towards that. But yes, of course you get inspired by that, and it's no different than in some ways where designers today who design Yves Saint Laurent or Dior, they're inspired by the designer, but they're not copying it.
Copying. Right.
They bringing some of it, a lot of the sensibility and the DNA into it, but they're not fully copying it.
I
They
appreciate
making
it.
their own.
It's like taking it
They,
in
they're
another
making their own style.
direction.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
for me, the fragrances, for me, I take it even further. There is a, there is going to be a reference in my head because there was some beautiful note in the fragrance that I would love to bring in, but it's always going to be my interpretation, not of a fragrance, of the very particular note that I
Mm.
believe that it could add something to the fragrance, which could make it unique to us.
I think that is absolutely interesting. So obviously, there's not going to be any Baccarat Rouge dupes from the maker anytime soon.
No, and also remember, the one thing is that part of the DNA of Fresh and the Maker today is that we like to lead, and
Right.
and not we like so obsessed with ourselves, but we like to bring something new to the market,
I
and
appreciate
that's what
that.
fascinates me. So we like to lead, and rather than be following something in a way, and we like to bring our stamp and our point of view, and I think that part is very very important. And if it's fresh, it was one way to look at fragrances, and now with Maker, I had to interpret it in a very different way because that's a true fragrance collection without any limitation of where it could be or how it needs to be driven by certain things. It was just I could imagine whatever I want to imagine with a Maker.
That's so interesting. I find that fascinating because like the maker as a outlet for perfume, how did that ever happen? First of all, can you share with everyone what the maker is? And while you do that, I'm going to share my screen with everyone and I'll offer an image of what the maker looks like. So please share like what was the inspiration behind offering a line of perfumes and associating that with a an amazing hospitality experience like the maker?
Well, so we started, the part of the original concept when Alina and I started talking about the new venture, we wanted to create sort of like a lifestyle brand, and but also lifestyle brand that starts with. We wanted to start from hospitality because Alina and I always were into um, design, art, and we felt that by creating a certain environment, by bringing sort of like a certain sensibility in design and marrying it together with um, sort of like a fragrance that could live in the world of the maker, that people could relate to and understand, and start building the stories around the fragrance, very much connected to the sensibility of the maker as a universe. When you step into the hotel, it's very, very particular, it's very sultry, it's bohemian,
It's
it's
beautiful.
very eclectic, it's everything is one of a kind in a way, and it's very highly curated. And it's sort of like when you come in here, it's people immediately becoming very curious. They become curious, they're very inspired, and but it's also um, sort of like the fragrances have the ability to sort of like uh, complete the story of the maker, and to become more than just a hotel, but become a lifestyle.
Well, the
You know,
maker is an
something.
experience.
It's an experience, and something you can refer to. The fragrance has a home. It has a story. It came out from somewhere. So it's one thing was inspiring another as I was moving along, and that's how that's what made me excited to sort of like take everything that we knew and really bring to the forefront 360 experience to our guests and the consumers who not necessarily can visit the maker, um, but who follow the maker and love the maker, and they have the opportunity to experience it through our candles and through our fragrances and so forth.
Now, I find that fascinating that the Maker Hotel was launched right before the pandemic. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
was very, very stressful. How did you manage that time period?
Well, I mean, the Maker Hotel was opening in phases. So, yeah, the first phase was opened, the lounge was opened before the pandemic. Our lobby and cafe was open before the pandemic. And then we opened our main restaurant and here conservatory, and the pandemic started like 2 months into it, and and
Wow.
uh, and we still were continuing finishing all the build out and construction, which took a long time. Constructions alone took a little over 4 years,
Wow.
uh, and we actually end up opening everything in August of 2020, right in the pandemic time,
Wow.
and with all the restrictions and everything else. But we were like so busy, and when we opened, we were like such an escape to people. It was absolutely incredible, and every day was a different day. You never knew what you're going to be coming into, but it was just amazing how my incredible team managed to navigate through all of that, and how the guests really embraced the whole concept of the maker. We're born literally in pandemic. That's when we opened the whole all the doors to everything, to the rooms, to everything. As I said, August of 2020.
That is so interesting. And that's what I was about to ask. Like, I'm sure there was a really, I'm sure it was nerve wracking because it's like, what are we going to do? There was such an unknown situation at the time. But I mean, because of that situation, I'm sure a lot of people were trying to escape to the maker. So it probably brought a lot of attention to the hotel as well.
We got a huge attention, and you know, it was pretty incredible because I don't want to brag too much about ourselves, but we
Go ahead,
literally
pat
got
yourself on the
we got
back.
into every magazine, and the maker had many nominations, not only as one of the best hotels in the country, but one of the best hotels in the world.
Wow.
So, and we had some prizes. We also got some prizes as one of the best public spaces in the world by one, and we not only nominations, but there are also major prizes, and we're recognized during very difficult time, and you know, it's sad what happened and everything else, but at the same time, I guess that's just what it was, and it was amazing to see how people were so happy to be here at the time. It's amazing that we created that place where people could escape at such a difficult time, and this is exactly what people were doing. Some people have been here over a dozen times,
Wow.
coming back to it. And during pandemic, some people would literally check out and book themselves the next day right away, and they'll come back 2 weeks later.
Well, really quickly, I'm really curious. There was a lot of amazing socialites and celebrities have visited the hotel. I found it fascinating to learn that Blake Lively, Meryl Streep, and this is a funnier character, ASAP Ferg, have all been guests at the Mako Hotel, and I just found it fascinating. Because I can't imagine like ASAP Ferg and Meryl Streep walking out their suite at the same time, bumping into each other in the hallway. I think that would be such an interesting interaction.
Well, Meryl Streep, actually, Meryl Streep never stayed here.
Ah,
She was here in the cafe. She came to the
nice.
cafe. She was here on premises. So she but she never stayed.
Okay.
But Blake Lively and others did stay. So
That must have been interesting.
but yeah, but it's interesting. Sometimes you walk into the lobby and you're like, really? It's like you sort of get used to it, but it's pretty amazing because in Hudson, it's really in this whole sort of like Hudson, Valley and the Catskills, and you have a lot of very interesting Columbia County. You have a lot of very interesting sort of diverse group of people and a lot of creatives, a lot
Yes.
of artists, and yeah, you have a lot of actors that also here, and they they luckily they really enjoy experiencing the maker.
So I am really curious about something as well. At the Maker, you can literally go to this awesome like alcove within the hotel to experience your collection of fragrances that you've curated for the hotel's guests, about 140 different fragrances. And every time I see that cabinet in the hotel, I'm always like trying to identify what bottles they are. I noticed that you had selections from Creed, who by the way featured you, featured the hotel as a Creed approved destination, which I found fascinating. But I
Yeah.
saw Creed, Joe Malone, Issey Miyake, Chanel, Comme des Garçons, Diaz and Durga. I've seen so many different brands featured in that cabinet. What inspired you to offer that to as an amenity to the guests at the hotel? I'm so curious.
Well, I mean, it's on the second floor of our main building. There's a fragrance library, and that always came as a concept, so it was part of the design right from the get-go. Uh, I felt like I speak the language of fragrances, and I wanted people and guests to participate in that. And
Brilliant.
it was great. What was important for me is not only to share my fragrances that I created, but also fragrances that I really appreciate. Fragrances I come from my personal collection, and I bought them because I felt that they really make a difference in the way how each fragrance, have its own iconic moment, and the ones that I showcase here. And I have over 500 fragrances in my
Wow.
collection, and we're showcasing here between 120 to 140 fragrances. It's rotating. Matter of fact, we're going to be upgrading it again.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
but it's what I found, some fragrances that just like they just felt different to me, and I wanted to
So they're
share it.
Lev approved, basically.
Yeah, it's put it under one roof,
I think that's so
It-
brilliant.
and if it's floral, if it's whatever it is, because I wore all of them. I mean, I don't see, and Elena, the maker is completely for us. It's all they're all gender neutral. I don't see fragrances that they belong to a man or a woman. There's no genders with the fragrance. Florals, woods. Sometimes I say the guys would say, "Oh, that smells like masculine," and I'm like, "You know how many florals are in it? In order for that to smell like this, there's a rose, there's a jasmine, there's a labdanum, there's like iris, whatever it is, it's all there. It's
Absolutely.
so to me, showing my sort of like personal collection of things that I wear. It also shows that I look at fragrances in a at everything in my life, and the
Right.
fragrance also very democratically, and it's I fell in love with the fragrance because of what it is, not like if I'm man, woman, whatever it is. So so
Absolutely.
so that part was very important. That's by the way how the Maker fragrances collection was designed to make sure
I,
that it appeals to it's for everybody.
well, that's the other thing I noticed. It's a very like, well, just to go back to the idea of adding a scented experience in a hotel. Again, I want to share with everyone my screen so they can have an opportunity to see this particular cabinet on the second floor. Um, I just find it, and I mean, guys, feel free because, like, I'm a fragrance nerd and I love to identify what's in this cabinet. It's so much fun. But I also think it's an amazingly brilliant concept to incorporate a scent to the experience of being on vacation. You know, I just think that's an amazing, brilliant way not only to offer guests a olfactory experience that's insane, that's pretty awesome, but as a way to keep that memory in their head through that scent is just profoundly smart. You don't really see that a lot of brands in hospitality they use their lobby as a way to impress people with a scent that is made for their space. But to offer an option where people can go and just consider a scent for their stay that will always remind them of that stay, I just think that was a very, very smart way to merge fragrance and hospitality in a very unique way. I just think that's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Well, we call it, sort of like travel fantasies. Okay. And sometimes when you travel, especially for pleasure, you put all your inhibitions away. That's the way how it should be. I mean, you
Absolutely.
feel liberated, I hope, in some ways, and you enjoy yourself. And sometimes you do things that you wouldn't do in everyday life, and let a lot of things go and just enjoy the moment. And I think that that's how some of those intimate stories are being built, particularly around the maker fragrances. And it's also the what you mentioned about how lobbies of hotels smell. It's what the hotels do today, which is great. And that's how you want people. That's how you want the guests to remember you by a fragrance. That just
Right.
shows how the sense of smell is so important. We also have spiritus, which is we have it in the candle, but it's the smell of the maker, and it is present in all of our public spaces, and it's very very particular, but it definitely captures the spirit of the maker as well.
So, as far as the fragrances from the maker, I'm a huge fan of them. That's one of the main reasons why I am a member of the maker team, because I got to smell the fragrances and I found them a very credible line of perfumes. I have to ask though, what made you decide to start with a line of 6 fragrances? Like, why not 10? Why not 3? Why not 2? Why not 1?
Well, listen, 6 is a good number.
Mm,
I For me, I had a certain groupings of fragrance that I wanted to put out there out of the gate. Something, each fragrance had to be very, very different, but
right,
each one will go into either into the floral or into the citrus family or go into the woodsy family, to the woods and so forth, and the fruitiness and whatever it is. This amount of fragrances gives you the ability to really create each one individual that really different from another. But
right.
also, I could create a collection that actually very intermixable. Because when you take our 6 fragrances right now, and the 7th, when I'm working on, and the 8th will continue being the same, but none of them are going to be having any crossover.
Right.
And I thought that 6 was a good number to express that story and come
Right.
out of the gate with 6. I mean, I would have loved to have 12 if I can. I would have loved to have 20 if I can.
You're
Uh,
risky. You're risky.
yeah, but I thought that 6 was the right thing to do, and then it wasn't only 6 fragrances, or only also 3 candles, and the
Right.
candles smell different from the fragrances. It's really 9 fragrances, and now we have 12 fragrances because we have 3 more candles that
Right.
we added since then, and so um, that really gave me an ability to really work on 6 of the fragrances and 3 of the candles, so it's really in total of 9, and to really create sort of like a certain impression of what the world of the maker wants to showcase, what's the story you want to tell through fragrance, and six just made sense for me. Uh,
Nice.
But
I
believe me,
find.
there was a on the table. There was a 12 at some point. A 9. There was never below
Oh
6.
no.
Never below 6.
Do you think it would be
So
difficult? Do you think it would be difficult for a brand to make an impact in today's perfume world if they only released 1 fragrance, if they launched with 1 scent? Do you think that would be hard in today's market? Or do you feel like with 6, it was a good number to like basically penetrate and, stand out in a way that makes, you have 6 opportunities to win people over rather than one? Was that part of the calculation?
yeah, I mean, I think that it's very difficult in today's world to tell a full story with just one fragrance.
Got it.
It's very I mean, if you look at Chanel number 5, I mean, she came up with Chanel number 5, and she had one fragrance. That was not complicated because there's not a lot of fragrances out there, but it's also this one fragrance that people could afford that couldn't afford her clothes, but they could wear her
Right.
fragrance. But say, I have something from Chanel number 5. So having it one fragrance, could make sense in this type of a scenario. But we're living today in, 21st century. There's a lot of fragrances out there. You really
Right.
need to tell a story. And what is your story? And I'm not sure if one fragrance really showcase who you are. And it could be the most beautiful fragrance in the world, and that could be very successful. But then you obviously have to continue building on that and showcase what other things you have. But you make the story so much richer when you showcase a collection.
And when you're coming out with this, when you're coming out with fragrances for your line, are you thinking, and I remember you mentioned this previously, but are you thinking about making fragrances that pleases your taste, or are you thinking about fragrances that pleases the taste of a specific client you have in mind that you're trying to attract with your brand?
Well, it's a great question. One is that it
Thank you.
has to be very married to my world of the maker. And I'm so in tune with that because together with Alina, we designed every crevice of this hotel. And we
Right.
found every piece of furniture and art and everything that's here. It was part of the journey. And the fragrance was very much on the same journey while we're doing all of that. And you know, you sort of like start creating those stories in your head and what they are and what they could be. So it starts from that, but it's
Gotcha.
also and how that one fragrance captured the moment that basically the story, because every fragrance has its own story, its own moment of experience, uh, and 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 uh, and the memory that you take with you and keep it to yourself, because fragrance is very sensual, it's very intimate, and that's how you remember other people by their fragrance. That's how you get attracted to
Absolutely.
other people by the fragrance and everything else. So yeah, that was one part of it, and of course it's also the style of the fragrance and what I think is missing. That I think that I
Wow.
wanted us to be unique but yet familiar. So there is a familiarity, but it still feels different.
Right.
So it's not, and it's not about us taking risks or not. It's always bringing something that, and the fragrance is always great when there's a certain element of familiarity. You sort of like, what is that? It smells like something. I don't know exactly what it is, but it reminds me of something. It's evokes some kind of emotion when you start thinking about it,
Such a
and
great
that's how I
point.
like to create. That's how I like to create fragrances. Um, it's it's that's how I believe that it could please somebody is by half recognizing something but not fully knowing what it is, and that's living that mystery, but have a little bit of familiarity to that, which I think makes it right away, um, you know, connect, creates a connection.
So it's important for you to offer the public what you think they need as opposed to what they particularly want. Would you say that is part of it as well?
I think it's not that what they just need. I mean, I think that that's not the way I would fully look at it. I think that it's somewhere where what they might want to explore, more than anything else, and maybe they don't even know what it is. But then when
Right.
they find it, they like it. You know, I remember when I sort of like worked on one of our very iconic product, brown sugar body polish at Fresh, uh, which everybody went crazy, and this is what put us on the map. And when we launched it back in 1996 or 1997, it's like it became a huge hit. And did anybody knew that they need brown sugar body polish? Something
Right.
that they scrap? No, they didn't know. But it's resonated with them, and I created it because I felt that maybe that experience by taking sugar, it was the first sugar-based product as a scrub because there are salts. Now I took the opposite approach to it. I incorporated sugar because of the natural humectants. There's a lot of great story behind the benefits, but also created this incredible oil with a certain fragrance that attached to it. And I felt like people should experience that. And I
Brown
feel like
sugar. Yeah.
and they should experience it. And so it's the same thing comes with the fragrance is that I don't know if they need, but it's more about when they experiencing that's evokes something that said maybe I do need it, and maybe without knowing, and how much we really need at the end of the day.
Right.
So
That's a great point.
so the only thing that what so you can't think about, oh, you need one more thing. You think how it might resonate with you, so you would want to make it part of your life, and that's so like the way how I like to approach anything that I do, and definitely in the fragrances more so, because fragrances could be very polarizing
Yeah,
in a way where one thing smells right on one person, the other thing is not on the other. It's not like skincare,
absolutely.
it's working. It's a little different. So
Absolutely.
you want to make sure it resonates, and you want to make sure you're opening it wide enough so there's going to be sort of like a bigger platform to work off of, so more people could like it, like
Mm.
they have a more variety to go after, and with a certain after certain characteristics of certain fragrances.
I find that so I find that so fascinating. And I'm also curious about something. So with Fresh and with the maker, you haven't done it just yet, but with Fresh, you offered people, I guess you could say, flankers of some of your best-selling fragrances. What is your thoughts about flankers in general? I'm just curious, because in the world of perfume right now, everything is about the flanker. A lot of brands are risk adverse, and I just feel like it's much easier to build on what's popular already rather than start something new, because there's a lot of costs that go into producing a perfume. And so I feel like a lot of brands are a little bit more risk adverse, and so they go forward with flankers. Like, but what is your? I mean, Fresh has done flankers in the past. I think sugar was a flanker. Brown sugar was a flanker of sugar, I believe. And cannabis rose was, I believe, a flanker of cannabis santal. So, what is your thoughts, generally speaking, on flankers and their role in perfumery at the moment?
I just think that you need to do what you think is right
Mm,
for yourself, for your brand, and what you want to express. I mean, if you don't take a risk, you're not creating something that becomes of an interest. I mean, when when you want to be in the leading position, it means
hmm
that you basically you dived, you jumped off the cliff already a long time ago. It's when you chose
mm,
that position, and you have to carry that heritage and that sort of like mindset with you for the rest of your life.
hmm
And what's the worst thing can happen to me? I love life, and I want it to last for as long as I can. And
right.
that's the important. I want that my daughters will be the happiest people on earth, and that their life will be the most amazing experience. And
That's
for
awesome.
Alina, for everybody that I love, I want to wish the best for them. But the rest is really, you got to take risks, you got to explore things, you got to lead, and I'm I would like to sort of like continue on this path. I've done it for so many years. I've done it most of my
Mm,
life, and then through Fresh, we've done it together with Alina in a major way, and being
mm,
disruptors, and how we've done it, and creating some really iconic products that exist until now and still growing in popularity and inspiration for
absolutely.
other brands, and we know that, and I'm very flattered by that, and I think it's amazing, and I feel it's great, and I almost look, for example, if somebody copied something from what I've done, what we've done, I'm okay. It's a flattery in some ways,
Yes.
because I was still the first one, and it's still not exactly the same. So it can't be exactly the same, because formulas are tricky. No matter how much you measure it, you cannot fully copy it. So
That's a
so
fact.
and including the fragrances. You can only, if you want to copy a fragrance and make it exactly the same, not that easy, particularly very complicated fragrances. So,
Absolutely.
so, I'm saying is that
Well,
I know that
nowadays, Lev, I'm
a
sorry.
lot of times, that's why I always, and you probably notice it in me, is that I know what's out there, and I appreciate so much there's some beautiful fragrances out there, but
Hmm
I never want to be the one that trying to do it in a way where um, it's going to be reminiscent of that. I
Got
could
you.
be inspired by something. Yes, of course, it's amazing, but I have to make it my own. And it's not. It doesn't. It cannot be sort of like a pretty obvious copy of that, because that's not interesting, because
Right.
the, it it's not really creative,
I
for my
appreciate
opinion.
that. No, I
So
appreciate that 100%. It's one thing to take an inspiration and then take that inspiration in a new direction that no one expected. That to me is still creative. But just to rehash an old idea, I think is kind of like what a lot of brands are doing, unfortunately. But I think it also leaves a lot of room for brands like the Maker to make an impact because that's something I don't think we're doing at all, to be honest. But I'm really, really inspired by the scent Stag right now. Stag is like it's my go-to, for the moment because I think it's perfect for the spring and winter, but I mean spring, winter, fall. But I'm really enjoying it right now. What was your focus when you were creating that scent? Like, what was the idea? What did you want to accomplish with Stag? And do you feel like you've accomplished it?
for me, this fragrance was really much inspired by sort of like a nomadic part of me, or how I imagine somebody who is like has sort of like a more of a nomadic personality, somebody who is traveling around the world. And again, it's not, I'm not talking about myself. I'm going outside of it already. I'm imagining it much bigger, much more. I romanticize it even in a bigger way. It is that I imagine that they are traveling around the world, and they everything they want is there's a meaning for everything they do, and they like to surround themselves with maybe not a lot of things, but everything that they have, it's great. It's like everything is very special. They People leave impressions on them. They leave impression on other people. They live the life in a certain way where they explore things, and they do it in not show offy way. They do it in a very sort of like more sensual, more personable, and that's what it was inspired by. It's sort of like a traveling nomad, and how much of that could more fit into what we're doing at the Maker, because it's so much part of the traveling and the hospitality
Right.
and being in a place that you're discovering that you've never been there, and I could see that that person, he or she, uh, being sort of like that persona. And I wanted to create that fragrance that has a very refined scent to it. Um, you know, that's sort of like surrounded by beautiful ingredients. You know, of course, you know, the vetiver plays a very, very big
Very
role in
major.
it, and you know it's pretty major. And you know you have sort of like the agar wood in it, which is also very, very beautiful. And one of my most favorite things is it's Palo Santo. I wish I could create a fragrance just Palo Santo. Oops, so I
I
shouldn't have talked
agree. I
about
feel you on that.
I could have talked about it, but because you know the dream is there, leather and all the other things. I wanted to combine all those very refined notes and almost like expensive notes. You know, something
It's yeah,
that smells fine, like a fine
100%.
cognac, like a fine wine, like a fine fabric,
That's what
cashmere.
a
All,
lot of clients mention to me. When a lot of clients smell that fragrance, the first thing they say is it smells expensive. How much is it?
yeah,
That's like,
and
they expect it to be so much more than what it actually costs. So it's fascinating. I always get that question.
yeah, but that's the idea of the Toledo. It was really a lot of it was very much about creating a fragrance that is going to express that, and
Wow.
has sort of like that refined character to that. And it also goes to the person that I imagine that connected to it. And I came across people like this in my travel, where you have created a connection with a person that somebody who is a stranger, but you become so close in that particular moment with that person, and it's very, very memorable. And there's something that leaves impression on you for so long, uh, probably for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I
You
mean, yeah, I could definitely see that with Stag.
Yeah,
It makes an impact also because it's a fragrance that doesn't smell like a bunch of other things at the moment. So when people
very
smell it
unique.
on me, they always want to know like what is that? Because it's like it's not like it's everywhere. And the thing about perfumery, especially now, is it feels as if everything is like derivative, or everything smells like something, you know? So when you're able to experience a fragrance that doesn't smell like anything that comes to your mind like really quick, but yet still smells attractive. It's not easy to make things that are unique, commercial, and wearable at the same time. And I think Stag does a really, really good job of straddling that line between uniqueness and wearability in a really awesome way. But also, I have to say, I really find the citruses within the line really awesome too. So you have Libertine, which is kind of like that airy citrus, and then you have Paradiso, which is like that earthy citrus. Why was it important for you to offer that dynamic in your citrus offerings within the maker?
You're talking about so you're talking about Paradiso
Liber-
particularly, like?
Libertine and Paradiso? Yeah. Well,
Well,
both.
Liberty. Well, so you see, the thing is that on the Libertine, Libertine to me was very much of being liberated. So when you travel, the whole thing about sort of like the traveling fantasy, and one of the things is that, and I mentioned before, is that is feeling liberated, and liberated. That means being in the moment and putting everything aside and not being in any way stuck in what you left behind you. Just like be really in the moment. Do whatever
I
you feel like you
appreciate
want
that.
to do. Celebrate the moments you have, either with yourself or with somebody you with. Um, you don't have to worry about what somebody else thinks about you, or anything. Be yourself, and that sort of like immediately took me to, I when I was thinking about citrus, is that it's citrus is sort of like I feel something. I saw fragrance being more crystallized, so it had like a crystal feel to that, and that's why the uh, you know the citrus part of Libertine had so much to do with that, with this clear mind and clear and clean mind, and I wanted it to be very much citrus oriented, but obviously the pomelo, the beautiful cedar wood that there, and the hibiscus, and then you have the whole other list of the bergamots and other things,
Right.
and uh, it's also very grounded in some ways. The citrus is extremely grounded, and it's it's grounded by the woods, and it stays. It's also very, very stable. So I wanted to make sure that you want to stay in that mindset, and when,
It's mhm.
and and again, you can say it before I move to Paradiso. So
No, I was gonna say, like, to me, like Libertine is almost like a natural antidepressant. You know, it's just a fragrance that just makes you feel happy. It's like a very, very, breath
yeah,
of fresh air experience in fragrance. But I love the idea of offering that divergence of the citruses in the collection. So you have one that's like on that area fresher vibe. Then you have the other that's a lot more earthy due to the patchouli. And the Paradiso, of course, is my favorite because it's a very, very unique take on a citrus scent. It kind of reminds me of a sparkling champagne with grapefruit juice, or like a grapefruit mimosa. It's just so
yeah,
crisp, and it reminds me of that effect you see when you look at light hitting a diamond and blinging off the different facets of the diamond. When I see that effect, I smell Paradiso. I know that sounds a little weird, but I'm a nerd, so forgive me. But I just
yeah.
I
So
think
no,
that fragrance is so well done.
yeah. But Paradiso, for example, it's lush fruits. I mean, they're more like they have more. It's my take on fruits, but
Okay,
obviously, anytime when you have a fruity fragrance, you will always have some citrus element in it.
right.
But also here, the Paradiso itself is sort of like, you have this beautiful note of mangosteen, which is, I love that fruit. It's something between
Absolutely.
sort of like peach and mango. The smell, it's very, very particular. There's a certain tartness to that also. Uh, Besides just being sort of like sweet and velvety, and that you have the beautiful plumeria, which is a like the floral seed that works so well with this with the fruity elements of that, and then you have the patchouli. I have this gorgeous patchouli that works so well with fruits, which is very unusual to use it this way, because when the fragrance sort of like evolves and macerates on your skin, you're not really detecting the patchouli, but it also grounds the fruits
Right.
without making them smell like candy.
Right.
And
Or a hippie.
or a hippie, exactly. And people have a lot of there's a misconception about how really patchouli smells, because patchouli is very refined, and
It
and
is.
and it's how it's distilled, it's how it's made, and it's very expensive.
It
So it's
is.
not. So sometimes when we smell essential oils of patchouli, they're literally just the top part of that. It's not
Right.
really the heart. When you go into the whole patchouli root, it is one of the most. It's like, I smelled once garlic, which funny, I can't really eat garlic because it disturbs my sense of smell,
Hmm.
because it's so powerful. It comes, maybe it's part of my Eastern where- sort of like heritage. It literally
Right,
comes
right.
right through my pores,
That's funny.
and I'll smell it for like 2 days. So when I smell
Wow.
garlic, because I smell the essence of garlic once,
Hmm.
and I smell the essence of patchouli, the strength is the same. They're that
Got it.
powerful. They're that powerful, and you got to be very careful how you use patchouli,
I
uh,
agree.
with what combination. I thought that I had the perfect opportunity to finally incorporate sort of like the patchouli and the fruits, and it makes this fragrance. It's like it's our unsung hero, because it's just sort of like, it's a fragrance that people very often gravitate to and love it. Once they make it part of their life, they always reordering it. Always. Like my
Well,
daughter Thais, who
uh huh.
runs our store, on 16th Street in Chelsea. She's very much like, that's it. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
she wears other fragrances. She likes
Yeah.
wild. She
But
uses
she
other
loves
combinations.
Paradiso.
Paradiso is her staple. She always
That's
goes back.
so funny. Well, you
And
know
and
what? Mhm.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say about it is that that was very much inspired by, you find the paradise, where your own paradise, wherever you are. It doesn't have to be an island or whatever it is. You find the moment of your own paradise. And I wanted to interpret it what it is. It could be a beautiful afternoon in this swimming pool and in the courtyard, which is this gorgeous garden, sitting there with a bunch of friends, and sipping a cocktail and having a great conversation, and the sun is like, the air is like silk, and the sun is warm on your skin, and you have like the best time of your life. And how many times people walked out of that um, area, and there would be, if I run into them, they say it was just a paradise. That we
Wow.
got there at 10 in the morning, we're leaving at 6. It was just paradise. So it's sort of like, you find your own paradise wherever it is, and that was inspired by that. So when you think about paradise, you start thinking about colors, and what paradise in my mind means, when we refer to it. So of course, the exotic fruits are going to be there and all of those. So that became my fruity fragrance.
And it is so awesome. Like, if I find that fragrance enthusiasts that come to the
Yeah,
store, when I meet them, that's the citrus that they love. Paradiso is
yeah,
just so interesting and unique. And a lot of times citrus comes across very been there, done that. So that's one of the other reasons why I find Paradiso to be so awesome. Now the other last two of the line, the Naked and the Fire, I find they're so opposite. Um, and it's interesting because the way I sometimes talk about the fragrance, I mentioned Naked is like that fragrance that Fire is the night before, Naked is the morning
uh-huh.
after. So it's like
Right.
Fire is that warm, sexy, huggable, boozy, just kind of like sitting on a Chesterfield, sipping on a cocktail, hugging up on your partner while you're in front of the fireplace. It's just a very warm, cozy, huggable, very sexy fragrance. And then you go to Naked, which is like waking up in clean sheets with your partner. It's that very interesting concept with those two scents in particular, and how they kind of bookend each other. It's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about those two scents and the inspiration behind them?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, you have, first of all, the fire. It was actually, fire was the first fragrance I created because
Okay.
was one of the first spaces that I designed, which is our lounge. And I imagine sort of like this couple sitting, and they sitting in the public space in front of this fireplace. We have this gorgeous fireplace, and in a lounge, and there's the music playing, the Billie Holiday in the background, and you hear sort of like the sound of the glasses, and you in the background, people are sort of like talking. The place is very, very intimate, but you are with that person, very intimate to this person. You close to them, you can smell them, and you're getting very aroused by their company, by being with them. You sort of like it's a moment of bliss, like everything
Got you.
so synchronized. You have such a chemistry with the person. Everything around you is so amazing. The smells, from the whole room they're there, but then you have your own moment with the person. I wanted the fragrance to smell very personable. It's really has more sort of like we call it sort of like a sultry amber because there's a
Right.
beautiful amber in it, and you have the juniper berry, which is very much comes from one of the gin is a liquor that I love very much, as especially the way how it tastes and the smell of it. So there's a juniper berry. There's a sort of like tobacco, a beautiful tobacco accord in it, and there's a beautiful vanilla in it. It's more like a Tahitian vanilla that has a little bit more of a smoky sort of like honey smoky type of sort of like character to that. And I wanted to sort of depict this moment of like literally bringing my lounge in my head to life in again, and naked in a way was we call it more like a sensual, very it's a, belongs to like more sensual mask. But naked for me was really, it's not, first of all, finishing up with fire is that it's it's not just sitting in front of the fireplace, it's how two people put each other on fire, and then
Ah.
it's continued into the moment of naked, where you have sort of like either they continued and they spend the time together and there was intimacy between them, and how they really can't have enough of each other, and how everything gets blended, their body smells, their breath, how the sheets are start taking their smells, and I started imagining what that smell is going to be like, and that's why I love very much sort of like that mask, particularly this beautiful white mask was very, very important, and the beautiful orris root, which has like very animalic feel to that, and a touch of violet that is so sensual, and passiflora, which is incredible because you also want to have a little bit of a slight saltiness to that because you want to have like a little bit of a body sweat to it. So it sort of like was sort of like a continuation of that moment that they experienced in the lounge, and now they have their own moment when they just by themselves, or not, or they didn't have the fire moment. That's where it started from, and then they'll have a fire moment tomorrow.
Right.
So it works one way or another, but it's sort of
Oh
like it's
no.
up to your imagination. I not going to say in what order I experienced that in one way or another in my life, but
Oh no.
some people did. So
I gotta tell you though that a, a lot of people when they smell fire, especially, they definitely get that sexy, sultry vibe. It's just one of those fragrances. I think that when people smell it, it's another one that just smells extremely expensive. But what I think makes it so much more special than a lot of fragrances within its category is the rum. Like the rum, in my opinion, is the secret sauce because it's so noticeable in the beginning of the fragrance. So it just like it's almost like a top note the way it hits your nose, and it's just, in my opinion, very elegant and very tasteful. It's a beautiful experience, and it dries down on me to turn into something really ambery. But I'm also interested in knowing. So when you designed fire and you designed when you designed Naked, were they concepts that were happening in your mind at the same time? Because they kind of do work as bookends, the way you describe it. Like, were they fragrances that you were thinking about at the same time, or did one inspire the other? Or I'm just
Na-
curious.
na- Naked followed right after that, of
Ah,
course. It was like it's immediately followed that because it was uh, I was on this track. I was on this moment. I was living in those spaces and experiencing them, and it was evoking certain emotion in me that had to tell that story. So they, after Fire, it triggered the Naked pretty much right away after that. But it's also given an opportunity to create another grouping of a fragrance, a different
right.
character. And I
Wow.
was very much inspired by our little campaign was very much on the Naked was based in a room called the Artist, which is one of the most sensual,
Beautiful.
one of the most popular rooms in the hotel. Sometimes it's
Yes.
impossible to book, and that's where it's sort of like I imagined that that's when it's all happened. And I was actually it's one of the first rooms that I experienced when it was once we fully furnished it. It's the
Wow.
first room I experienced and I slept in, and that completely solidified for me the fragrance. It's before the hotel was open. It's when we were
Wow.
still, and yes, I was taking notes on other fragrances and already having some directional ideas, but they literally deep dive happened immediately after Fire
So
to the Naked.
before you even conceive of a scent, you are creating the story for the fragrance first, and then you
Absolutely,
create the fragrance to fit that story. Is that like your process, would you say?
always. I don't have.
That's pretty
It's
awesome.
I cannot think about the fragrance without that being associated with something.
Well,
It
I
has to
find
be
that when
associated. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I find that when that happens, it makes it so much easier to connect with the fragrance.
Right. Oh, my, of course. I mean, it's not only to connect. It gives me the opportunity to really create the fragrance in my head, and it cannot. The perfumers that I'm working with, they know that I'm going to be coming up with a story, and I'm telling them a full story, whatever that story is, and no matter how much of it I'm exposing myself, but if I feel that that's what I need to express, I, I'll do it. So
Absolutely.
very easily. I feel very comfortable with that. But I need to always connect it to a moment, and that's what jump starts it. It's an experience.
And that's
It's
also
not
why.
it's not born on its own because I don't look at it chemically. I look at it more romantically.
And there's nothing in the collection that smells frivolous, like it doesn't belong there, or it was like some, random idea that you just, nothing feels rushed, nothing feels non-purposeful, which is pretty awesome about the Maker line. I'm very, very happy to be associated. But Lev, I'm really curious, what is your future outlook for the Maker brand? Where do you see it going?
Well, see, coming a lot of fragrances going to be coming. Uh, Can't talk about it in full, and I know you
For
know
sure.
you know the secret. We're keeping it right now because we need to keep an element of surprise. There's
Yes.
going to be an incredible fragrance coming up this year, in the end of this year. Uh, Something I worked on actually for a very long time, and you uh, you actually had some part in it in some ways because you're broad behind the scenes, and I wanted to get also your opinion about it, which I thought was amazing, and I love our collaboration. I'll continue doing that, but that's highly anticipated thing, at least
Yes.
internally with my teams.
Yes.
And as I've been wearing this fragrance now, I get a lot of comments. So it's
Oh.
it's having quite an interesting reaction because a lot of times what I do, I wear fragrances before I launch them. Just I have it on me, and it's interesting to see how people react to certain things. And this particular
That's
fragrance,
awesome.
I have a lot of reaction, which
That's
is
awesome.
uh, so so
I'm excited.
so uh, yeah. No, and I appreciate you being there and looking at it with me in the final stages of that. And again, looking forward to continue doing more of those things with you.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we're doing that and going to continue sort of like adding new fragrances. I mean, I have a few other that I also already explored in the process. So, but we're going to be launching at least one, maybe two fragrances every year. But it's probably at this point it's going to be one fragrance a year, and we're going to continue expanding our candle collection
I love
and
that.
expanding our offering all together.
I love the idea of doing not like 3, 4 releases in one year. I'm
No,
noticing a little trend. A lot of brands are trying, well, some brands are trying to do like kind of like what they call drops, which are like, limited edition, kind of like here, try this out type of experiences. And kind of like what streetwear brands are doing, they create a limited option so people run and grab them, and now you have one of a few bottles on in the world of that particular scent or style.
yeah, I agree with
I
you. I just want to tell you only one thing, Leighton.
Sure.
I'm
I know.
whatever happened. There's nobody around, but I'm like five. What is 5% of my battery on?
Okay,
Gotta
no doubt. Yeah,
just in case. Just in case.
I was
Just in
actually going
case.
to wrap this up for sure. I was just wrapping
No,
this
no, no,
up
no.
for
I
sure.
would love to stay and talk for as long as you want. It's just I don't have anybody around me to help me.
No, no,
If
completely understand.
there's no, I don't have any charger with me or anything else.
No,
So just
completely
in case.
understand, but I'm appreciating you letting me know that. So we can wrap it up. I think I've learned a lot, and I think you've shared a lot with my audience, and I'm really grateful that you were able to find some time. I know you had a very busy schedule, so thank you so much, Lev, for being a part of this live stream. I think it was extremely informative, and I learned a lot from the mind of a very brilliant business mind, a habitual risk taker who takes risks and succeeds when he does. And I think that's pretty awesome. That's something that I'm learning based on like watching you and Alina do your thing. Sometimes you just have to, take a risk, step out, put your best effort, and just let the cards fall where they may. So many people don't follow that. So many people are just all about, being safe, but you don't make impacts when you're safe most of the time.
I know.
So I really appreciate the fact that you have, accomplished so much, and it's I'm very proud to be a part of the Maker and to be learning and working with you. So thank you so much for being on the channel, Lev. If you'd like to share, some parting comments, I'd love that.
Yeah, well, the parting comments again, it's been amazing, as much as I always enjoy spending time with you in person, in the store, having lunch or whatever interactions we have together on the fragrance house. I enjoyed very much doing that. It was awesome. I love your questions, and you have a very curious mind, and you always want to find find out more and more, which is incredible. And again, it's been amazing working with you, and lucky to have you part of the maker world. And
Thank you.
and I sort of like sneaked and read some of the comments from uh, you know your followers, and I enjoyed some of the comments that they had, and I really appreciate it. Hope that you guys all enjoyed it, because I always love talk about fragrances. I'm very passionate about that, and it was fun, and it was fun to have you on the other side of it. So hope
Thank
we'll do
you.
more of that.
I would love that. When the new scent comes out, we have to make it happen again because I think it's going to be very impactful when the people get to try it. I think it's going to be so awesome.
No, that's
But
awesome.
thank you so much, Lev. I just
Thank
want to say thank you to everyone who was able to join this live stream. Thank you so much, Shayna, for being so instrumental for helping Lev and I make this happen. Thank you so much, my audience. Love you all. Thank you so much for being such an amazing family and community. And please, when this video is uploaded, come back and add a comment in the comment section and share what your opinions are and what you got out of it. I'm really, really curious to hear and see those. So thank you so much, guys. It was such an
Thank you.
amazing experience. Thank you so much, Lev. You have an
Not
amazing evening. And guys, have a blessed day. I'm E, and this is Simply Put Sense. And it was my pleasure to be on with you all today. Have a lovely evening. Be well.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.